Hello everyone, I'm Mike DeAngelo with That's Entertainment, and this is your Lost Gems review of Alundra by Matrix Software. If imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, then Matrix Software's first title, Alundra, released in 1997, was doing its best to praise Nintendo's classic, The Legend of Zelda. From the mechanics to some of the artwork, there were nods to the veteran series, some of them more obvious than others. And for a first foray, the developer managed to get a fairly good critical response as well. The game was published in America by Working Designs, who back then used a supply and demand methodology to sell all its games, making Alundra an even rarer gem. So it's clear that Alundra has taken inspiration from Zelda, but does it have the ability to call itself anything other than an imitator? The titular character, Alundra, is en route to the town of Anoa. It's a quaint little village where most of the townsfolk know each other, and it has a fairly tight-knit community. Thus, when strange dreams begin plaguing Anoa, fear grips the villagers almost immediately. Alundra, though, guided by dreams of his own, has a special gift that he can employ to help rescue Anoa. He can enter the townsfolk's minds when they sleep, ridding them of horrible monsters that infest their nightmares. However, the game doesn't just take place within the tortured minds of Anoa's people. The island that the world is situated on is threatened by a powerful demon named Melzus, who is at the root of all the chaos that is enveloping the once peaceful land. Alundra must split his time between seeking out a way to defeat the demon while trying to aid the villagers. The story is not the cheeriest. Characters are lost forever, nobody quite safe while under the scrutiny of Melzus. The darker subject matter is aided by subtle religious political unrest as well, which ends up making the game feel more guided than other adventure games. As previously mentioned, Alundra wholeheartedly idolizes the mechanics of the older titles of the Legend of Zelda series. You can't progress to certain points of the game without first gathering items to help you go through dungeons, caves, and crypts. Alundra even has its own version of heart containers in the form of life vessels. The puzzles are a bit more complex than the Nintendo Classic. Some might even find some respite by having a pen and paper nearby to jot notes down. The difficulty is a little bit on the harsher side as well. And because of the ability to jump, Alundra has some platforming elements. Some of the jumps require you to be nimble and persistent, and some players may end up thinking that there is no way to proceed, especially given touchy controls that take some getting used to. Boss fights are a little on the easy side comparatively. It's a nice change of pace from the smaller enemies you fight though. The game is presented as a top-down adventure RPG in the veins of Legend of Zelda, but the graphics far precede the classic games that it was emulating. And while Alundra was being released in 1997, Nintendo was still developing its most acclaimed Zelda title. In this way, it was almost as if Nintendo passed the torch to Matrix Software, even though it was on another company's system. Shadows and effects managed to look gorgeous throughout the game. Everything was put together with an enjoyable design, and changing back and forth from the dream world to the real world really helps to keep things fresh. Players are even treated to a hand-drawn movie at the beginning and end of the game. The sound is a little bit less spectacular. There is no voice work, which isn't all too terrible given the genre of the game and the time that it came out. The music is a little less memorable than the game it imitates, though it does come forward with a much darker theme, to good effect. Alundra gives incentive to collectors. Scattered about the game world are gilded falcons. When you manage to gather enough, you can turn them in for several nice rewards. There are several different items that you can get that you don't need to, which might convince you to play through the compelling narrative again. On the other side, there are certain collectibles that you might end up missing forever as a result of some of the linearity of the game. While Nintendo was proving to the world that you could teach an old dog new tricks, Matrix Software was proving that the old standard still worked wonders if you found a new way to polish it up. With the exception of a difficulty that may be off-putting to some as a result of a very few awkward design choices, Alundra was a shining beacon in the realm of 2D, where 3D graphics were becoming the norm. Sadly, while it was obvious that Matrix Software had the chops to keep the series going, the sequel to the original game bore nothing in common except the name, and that includes its level of quality. That's Entertainment awards Alundra a score of 9 out of 10.